I've been in the dark for I don't even know how long at this point. Every path, every lead, every chance where I feel like I'm finally out of here, just looking for a little bit of light to show me the way, then I'm bombarded by some of the worst possible news you could hear. Being a Square Enix fan in 2025 is a practice in public humiliation. The company that has brought me some of my favorite experiences in this lifetime also is replacing 70% of their quality assurance and debugging with AI, displacing those who could have used this position as entry into the games industry. Then there were also the massive layoffs to the US and European divisions, stating that the company was implementing overseas structure reforms to create a more agile business abroad, cutting nearly 140 jobs in their London offices alone. Of course, we can't forget about when Square Enix wanted to focus more on the blockchain technology and NFTs. Obviously, what's something that gamers love more than NFTs? Oh my god, we love these so much! And while they're in this major restructuring right now, it's been revealed that many unannounced projects were cancelled, including games by Yoko Taro, you know, the man behind Nier Automata, the first major Square Enix hit in years that they've barely done anything with, and people have been begging for more of his work, only to find out that stuff has been cancelled behind the scenes. We can't forget about Kingdom Hearts Missing Link, the only bit of Kingdom Hearts material we were clinging to before they took it out back old Yeller style. Even Final Fantasy XIV, their massive MMORPG, which is considered the company's golden goose, has seen its own decline in both gameplay experience and active player base after the Dawn Trail expansion. There's also the entire situation with them needing to sell their Western studios after the debacle with Marvel's Avengers, which was a massive loss for them, and they completely damaged their reputation with the Marvel brand. So much so, we got Guardians of the Galaxy shortly after, and that game was actually phenomenal, and what I expect from Square Enix ended up selling pretty badly because no one trusted it after Marvel's Avengers. Funny enough, I did like the campaign for Marvel's Avengers. I thought it was a good time. But the moment I started to get into the live service stuff, I immediately checked out. And I'm also probably one of like 10 people on Earth who doesn't completely hate Forspoken, which is another game that pretty badly damaged their reputation. People clowned on it all the time and it didn't end up selling well at all. But there's nothing as bad as Balan Wonderworld. I remember thinking Square was going to get their own 3D Mario platformer, but instead we got one of the worst games I've ever played in my life. I was not kidding when I said it's a humiliation ritual, leading us to the situation we're in now, where the company's reputation has been so badly harmed, but there are changes that go beyond just the game development aspect, as Square Enix is in a major restructuring change, although a new player has entered the ring of Square Enix earlier this year, and their presence has only raised a lot more questions between the fan base. But before I get into it, let me know in the comment section below. If you were the president of Square Enix, what would you do? Business decisions, game developments, other side projects you might have in mind? If it were me, I would make a Kingdom Hearts collection of Days, Recoded, and Chain of Memories. These are the Kingdom Hearts games you can't really play anymore, so to have these games preserved in a modern way would be really cool. It would probably only sell like 28 copies, but I'd still want that really bad. And while you're down there, please be sure to hit that like button and subscribe. So normally I don't talk about gaming politics or business on here, especially when it comes to how companies are publicly traded and handled on the market. I just don't feel well versed talking about that kind of stuff. I'd just rather stick to talking about the Keyblade or Sora shoes or whatever. But this is important and I wanted to share how it's been presented to me and how I'm basically interpreting what's happening with Square Enix at the moment. So there's this activist investment firm called 3D Investment Partners, who has been slowly building up how many shares they own in Square Enix. An activist investment firm uses the strategy where they buy smaller stakes inside of a publicly traded company that they think are undervalued. By building up more shares, their influence also increases in the company, allowing them to push management for changes. At the time of this recording, 3D Investment Partners is the second largest shareholder for Square Enix, only being behind Fukushima, the founder of Enix before they were merged with Square to create Square Enix. And I feel like every few weeks, the amount of shares they own is just continuing to increase. There's already been instances of 3D Investment Partners attempting to put their influence on Square, with the company stating that they did try to communicate with the president only to be replied with an email stating without addressing any specific management issues or solutions we had raised, and without providing any concrete explanation for his reasoning that the current medium business plan was sufficient and a new review framework was not necessary. They got this email and that reply was clearly not sufficient enough that they put out a 100-page PowerPoint presentation basically stating everything that Square Enix needs to improve on. And this was posted onto the internet to build pressure for other Square Enix stockholders. Now, I'm not going to go through everything in this since it's massive, but there are a few key points that I want to highlight. A lot of this presentation focuses on how Capcom is leading the way in development, how their games are cheaper to produce and how they get more money on their investments, and how Square Enix should be more like them, which is an idea that I can get with since Capcom is in a golden era right now. They keep dropping bangers and have a consistent release schedule of all their franchises. Also, keeping everything within the same engine definitely makes things cheaper for them. But then he kinda goes ham on Final Fantasy XVI and the Dragon Quest remake, attempting to use a fan quote as a will to build up some anger around the series, even though the quote that they use paints such a small picture around the perception of the game, especially in the case of Dragon Quest, which sold well and probably made Square Enix some money back since it was a lot smaller to produce. Point is, 3D investment firm took a pretty hard swing with making this presentation public. The press got their hands on it and it's basically been the whole conversation since then. Now, what does this even really mean for Square Enix? Well, for starters, a company is not going to put this much money into something without wanting to get something out of it. I like how they say at the end of their presentation, once again, surprise us, move us, and ignite that passion we once felt. For gamers across the globe have been waiting endlessly for that irreplaceable experience. Which is a sentiment I can get around, but this method of collecting up smaller shares in a company to build up your influence, everything about this just feels like corporate greed. If Square Enix does well, then 3D investment firm can boast about how their influence improved the company. If Square Enix continues to flounder, then 3D investment firm can go ahead and say, see, this is what you get for not listening to us. It puts Square in an uncomfortable position that will only get more uncomfortable depending on how their next few games will sell. In my opinion, these next 4 major titles will determine the future of Square Enix, and I'm going to give my thoughts on how these games are going to sell or how I think they're going to be perceived, and what that means for the next era of Square Enix, because I think these 4 will determine Square Enix's future forever. It's likely we'll be seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake Part 3 next. It just seems like the most likely to release out of all the games they have in the pipeline, and I think the game will be received well critically, probably on par with the other entries in the series. This entry will likely sell more than Rebirth only because of their multi-platform push. Seeing the game drop on PC, PlayStation, Nintendo Switch 2, and whatever else all at the same time needs to be what they do if they want to make this multi-platform push good. The ports that we have seen have been great and very appreciated, but these ports will do best when they release alongside the rest of them. No more exclusivity will help push Part 3 to get where it needs to be a winner. Then there's Kingdom Hearts 4. I don't think Kingdom Hearts 4 will sell more than Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts 3 had years of build-up and anticipation surrounding it, while Kingdom Hearts 4 might be an entry where people skip out on, especially fully depending on their feelings on Kingdom Hearts 3. I still think it will be well received by fans and critics, but Kingdom Hearts 4 won't be as much of a big hit as Kingdom Hearts 3. Hopefully that doesn't make situations more unfortunate for the series. Then there's Dragon Quest XII. This is the game that we know the least about, but judging on the history of the series, it's gonna do great. Mainline Dragon Quest always go crazy when they release in Japan, and I think Dragon Quest influence has increased a lot in the Americas since the release of Dragon Quest XI. I'm also not kidding that Heroes' inclusion in Super Smash Bros. Has also increased Dragon Quest's reach out here. So Dragon Quest XII might break some records for the series here in the United States. I think this is going to be the clear winner out of all of them. And lastly, whatever they decide to do with Final Fantasy XVII. In my opinion, this is the make or break for Square Enix. Final Fantasy XVII will need to be a hit both commercially and critically. I would love it if Final Fantasy kept the gameplay of the remake trilogy. In my opinion, it's the best, most fun, and most unique gameplay that the series has ever had. And it will also need to be done without Square Enix feel like they're blowing their whole budget on the game. And I think it should be the gameplay staple moving forward. But turn-based has also stepped back into the ring for them. We live in a world where Expedition 33 exists, showing more interest around turn-based games, and showing a big game can be made with a smaller budget. Ultimately, the blueprint is out there, they just need to make something that breaks out. And this is possibly the biggest challenge out of all of them. I think these next 4 games will need to perform well. Also, by the time these games drop, 3D investment partners might own even more of Square Enix, making more judgment calls based on how these games are performing. I've even seen the conversation turn over to Square Enix selling the company to a bigger company so they can stay afloat, which in this day and age wouldn't really surprise me, considering I've seen so many big mergers happen within the entertainment space. I feel like there's just gonna be 3 companies that own everything eventually. Like, can you imagine a world where Final Fantasy is owned by Sony or Nintendo or Capcom? What on earth? Personally, I don't like it where every time I log onto the internet, it's a new way for Square Enix to shoot themselves in the foot. But this is different. This is an outside influence with very specific goals in mind. They're talking about increasing shareholder values, but this is likely at the expense of people's jobs or the gaming experience. It doesn't help that the current president of Square Enix has been very hush mode about everything. I know they're in this restructuring phase, but the lack of communication is on their head. So much so that the firm had to put a 100-page docu online like it was nothing. And this is only looking like the beginning of the pressure from 3D investment firm. It's one of those things that we'll just have to wait and see what happens. Despite all of this, I'm glad that Square Enix continues to build on their 2.5D games. It's good to see that they have a section dedicated to these games. The development behind them feels so tight and focused. Especially since these are smaller games, I think Square Enix needs to put more of these to pad out their schedule. I look at what Nintendo does, where we don't get a new 3D Mario or a new 3D Zelda all the time. They pop out with smaller games to fill out that schedule and boost brand recognition. I think investing in more AA games is the way to go. This AAA bubble has gone on for too long and has shown that it cannot be sustained. And I've been begging for a Union Cross remake in the old Kingdom Hearts art style for years. Please, the people yearn for games that are uglier, shorter, and the developers are being paid more. No, I am not kidding. It's one thing too, because I've been on the Square Enix train for a long time, Kingdom Hearts for my whole life, and Final Fantasy for like a decade now. But I'm seeing the changes in the wind, and this feels so much different than before. It's not like a single issue to focus on, but the entire thing as a whole. Square's next step will be the most important to their survival. Will they need to sell to the highest bidder, or will they be able to build up that prestige that made them legends in the first place? Of course, this is what I think. I hate coming on here with bad news or game changers or whatever. I just love to be talking about Kingdom Hearts or whatever, you know how it is. But capitalism just needs to keep on moving, no matter the cost. Of course, let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section below. Be sure to comment, like, subscribe, and stay awesome.